Thursday afternoon. Tommy Scoops. Maybe we gotta remake the intro, Tom, so that we could get more of a jam band style. Would that feel comfortable for you?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I feel like that's the way the Grateful Dead, collaboration, get everybody involved. I think that'd be nice.
We are very excited for this show. Tom has been hitting the pavement as a reporter all day. He's got some breaking news about Evander and his potential future and what's going on in Portland, or at least his current and maybe his past, as we put together the documentary about his life and his time with the Portland Timbers, coming off last night's 5-0 wild card loss at home as an away team to the Vancouver Whitecaps. That closes up our wild card week so far, and we've got the first round of the playoffs ready to roll on Friday night. So we're going to preview all the series coming forward. We're going to talk about those wild card games. We will talk about Evander, the MLS Player Association salary drop, the second one of the year, has occurred. So we are getting all the salaries for the players who signed in the summer. And fortunately, in Major League Soccer, we finally are getting the contract status in the releases of players, but we don't get how much they make. And we've had a laundry list of big guests over the last few weeks. We had Will Kuntz, general manager of the LA Galaxy. We had Tim Bezbatchenko, former president of Columbus Crew, now running a Premier League team, multi-club model for Bill Foley. We've had some big names, Herculez Gomez, Joe Larry, and we're going to have two minor guests to join us. Andrew Wiebe and Matt Doyle are going to join us for what we are going to do, the first ever MLS postseason Golden Boot draft, and we're excited about that. Tom, it's going to be the family all back together again.
That makes me extremely happy. It also feels very on brand that I feel like I'm assuming this was Doyle creating another Golden Boot competition because he's angry that Team Tom and Kalen absolutely dog walked the competition this year again after squeaking one out last year. That's two in a row. I think he's just going to keep throwing Golden Boot competitions at the wall until we don't win, and then say that one was the most important one. I think that's what he's doing.
I guessed it on Extra Time today, and we did stuff about the Golden Boot, and I will allow them to come on so that they can respond to the accusations that have been thrown across the playing field here from Tom Bogert and Tommy Scoops, because I'm offended for them. What you just said offended me for them.
You read our group chat. Give me a break. I'm the victim here. I'm the victim. I'm not. You know what? Let me take that back. I'm not a victim. This is not a victim mentality. I'm a winner. I win. They get upset, and they try to make rules to take away from Team Tom and Team Kalen. And that's okay. Haters are gonna hate when you have what they want. They come for you.
What I didn't realize, Tom, and the thing that I've actually been most let down by today was I didn't realize that you were a spreadsheet mate. I didn't realize that you set up your team to win via spreadsheet and stats. I thought you were like beautiful game purist type guy, but I'm learning a lot about you, and it's changing my view on things. I'll just put it there. A lot to talk about. I want to start out by apologizing that SoccerWise is not run by adults in the room, and we've let you down by the people that have run this. And let's roll into this Evander story. So last night after the game, 5-0 pasting at home in front of their fans. Portland are out. They are not a playoff team. We have decided that it's not a playoff. It is the postseason. It's a wild card game. It doesn't count. They lose, and Evander goes and puts out a tweet thread, which is never great. And in it, he had a lot to say about, he apologized to the fans for the performance and what happened on Wednesday night. And then he said that the fans deserved better for the people that were in charge of the team. And he had some disparaging things to say about these mysterious people that are in charge of things in Portland. Since then, you have hit the ground running, working on this. Give Me Sport, you put it out as a written article. Talk to us a little bit about what you've learned over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, so I've been reporting on Evander and the Portland Timbers contract situation most of the summer. It really kind of came to a head in September when there was a bid from a Qatari club that the club rejected, and I'm getting different versions of events where one side is telling me Evander told the club, I want to stay here and sign a new contract, and the other side saying he wanted that move when that contract wasn't available, and it's a non-starter because the Portland Timbers were not going to sell their star player, an MVP finalist, in middle of September when they could not sign somebody to replace him. That's kind of just where that starting point was. So this is not something that came up overnight. This is something that's been brewing. And throughout my conversations, I spoke extensively with 7 sources with direct knowledge of the situation, both inside the locker room, inside the club, people with direct knowledge of the club, people in Evander's camp, all of that. I feel like I've got all sides covered. One source said it to me this way, and I think this is the best way to break it down. This is a contract dispute. And that's where it started. There are many more nuances to come around this, particularly with Evander's camp feeling that the club broke his trust and broken promises. Now, I pushed and asked, what were the broken promises? They didn't want to get into it. So the broken promises, or alleged broken promises, I guess you could say, were unspecified. I will say that those posts on X, those social media posts wasn't the only time on Wednesday night that he voiced his displeasure with the club. So after the match, head coach Phil Neville addressed the team in the locker room after they lose 5-0 to the Vancouver Whitecaps. GM Ned Grabavoy then addresses the team in the locker room, talking about disappointment. Obviously, it was a very sour scene. The team was broken after getting thrashed 5-0 to Vancouver Whitecaps. Evander starts shaking his head, and this is per multiple sources. Starts shaking his head and says, "Ned Grabavoy, you are the person to blame for the situation." And that's kind of where it ended, as far as I was told, again, by multiple sources inside and outside the locker room. But so before he even tweeted this, which I'm going to go ahead and assume was a little bit premeditated, before he went on social media to post about the club, he directly blamed Ned Grabavoy and GM. And again, this is just a symptom of these contract disputes, these drawn-out negotiations that have been happening since the summer, that both sides feel like that they're doing everything they can and so not getting the result they want. So this is the culmination, of a lot of little transgressions between these two sides, and something that has been really simmering beneath the surface for a couple months, and the season ends in a really, really bad way, and now it bursts out of the surface.
David Ponce in the chat says, Charlotte fan here, forgive the ignorance. Who is Ned Grabavoy? Great question. Ned Grabavoy is general manager of the Portland Timbers. Phil Neville, head coach. Merritt Paulson, the owner, who's very involved in the team for an owner. So now you've got all the characters as well, and Evander, the star player himself. I thought it was interesting in your piece, you touched on, and clearly comments came from someone about one performance this season, which he had an MVP performance. It was against the Galaxy at home, right?
Yep. Correct.
And I think we came on this show and I said Evander didn't even celebrate these goals. The line I used was it was like he was offended that the Galaxy made him do that to them.
You were close.
The reading in Portland was a little different, but the offense was still there.
Yeah. So again, speaking through sources of this, somebody brings up and goes, "Do you remember the game against the LA Galaxy? He had 2 goals." And I was like, "Absolutely, that was a credible performance." All of that. He goes, "Do you remember the goals?" Like, "Yeah, they're awesome." He goes, "Do you remember the celebrations?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like stone faced and like more or less like, "I do this for a living. Like, there's no big deal for me." It's like, no, like he was really upset. He went into that game angry, and that he did that on purpose. Like, that was the point. I'm gonna score this incredible goal, and I'm gonna stand here stone faced. I'm not gonna go run around to the fans, go to the corner. All he did in celebrations, I went back and watched it this morning because I was making sure that my memory didn't betray me. I went back and watched it this morning. I put the clip of one of the goals in the article. He bangs one, turns around, stands there stone faced, and just like puts his arms out. Teammate, like the way that I'm standing right now for the podcast, just completely stone faced with my arms out. That's it, and just like I'll hug my teammates. That's it. And from what I was told, that there was, again, this was 10 days before or after after the bid was rejected from the Qatari club, and this was as negotiations continued for a new contract that weren't going well.
And just so everyone understands, Evander signed this year. Like, this is his first season. Is it his second year?
Yeah. No. So here, and so hang on, and I'm gonna I have all the kind of the details on the contract and the contract talk. So
okay.
And I think that that's something that we should get off the top as well. So there was a contract offer on the table from the Portland Timbers to Evander of $13 million over 3 years. That's an average of $4.3 million per year. And that would make him paid more than Denny Bouanga, paid more than Lucho Costa. And you can cherry pick somebody like Cucho Hernandez, who is very, very due for a pay raise as well. But the contemporaries of guys who have signed contracts in recent years that are in the MVP finalist type group, in the best 11 type group, as Evander has been this season, he is surpassing all of them. It would be just outside the top 10 in the league. It would be the biggest contract the Portland Timbers have ever given a player. And it would be, a 40% raise or something. Like, he's on $2.36 million right now, and this contract would be $4.3 million. Evander's camp, we're content with the numbers, even though he could get more in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Middle East, right? He could get more there. But he was content with these numbers and also said, we want a written release clause of 50 million. And the Timbers, which I think is fair, the Timbers said, if we're giving you all this money, you don't also get the release clause. And this was a sticking point on both sides that neither were willing to bend on. And you can kind of get into the minutia of whether or not, like, what would the offer come for, a player of his age come from MLS, right? Like, I don't know. But one thing is certain is that, like, when I'm being told that Evander wants to stay in Portland, he's happy, he wants all this, right? Like, the Timbers are like, well, if you want to stay, why are you insisting that there's a release clause in this? Yeah. And, like, it's not as simple as that, because that just helps with leverage for future contract negotiations. But, like, I think that point is fair. So I think that just about lays out all the facts. There's more factual stuff, but I think the top line think about here is it all starts from a contract dispute, but it has really gone into mistrust. And again, sources have told me that dating back to when Portland were in the process of signing Evander from FC Midtjylland, going to Denmark. This started under Gavin Wilkinson, and Gavin Wilkinson departed the club. Ned Grabavoy was his assistant GM. He was part of these conversations from the beginning as well. So the players' camp feels as if there have been broken promises. And again, like I said before, I was not told specifically what those promises were. So that's all I have.
Man, it's tough that it feels like it was broken out the gate. Like, before he literally signed with the team, there's all this frustration on his side about the way it played out. And I think that part is like, you can't get over that. The only thing you can do is try and keep throwing money at it.
Yeah, so, and I probably didn't delineate that perfectly, that, like, it's not like before he signed the contract, he was already pissed off. It was, some of the promises that got him to sign the contract that he was expecting and either took too long or again, in their words, haven't really happened. So that's all that. But again, like, it dates back to this. So that's just another way that I wanted to describe that. Again, this isn't something that just even just came up over the summer, let alone over the last few weeks, right? Like, this is something that has been simmering for a bit. Like, I heard some of this in preseason. Flamengo came in with a bid, like, his camp. Like, it's not like Portland were seeking this out. Like, his camp, which is not abnormal in the world of soccer, of an agent doing work and saying, oh, we have an offer, here it is, right? Like, Portland didn't want to lose him to Flamengo in the winter, but, like, that's another part of what it is. I was like, okay, no, we'll talk about a new contract now, right? Like, we'll talk about whatever promises, right? Like, so this is not something that's new.
And on that number, you're talking in that range you mentioned, that's value for what it is, right? That's where he has sat this year. You called him an MVP finalist. He is one officially now. Do we know?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. He is officially. And either way, the performance he's put together, the numbers you said, it's Emil Forsberg, Ache, Sebastian Driussi, Christian Benteke, Carlos Heel. That's sort of that range of where he would sit. He's performed in MLS at an equal level, if not better, than all the players I just mentioned. And Portland shelled out a lot of money. It was over $10 million.
So something like something between like 8 and 10, something in that range.
And so they shelled out that money to get him a record signing for them, and he has hit. He has been there. Is one of the things we talked about in the whole MVP conversation is he cannot elevate every part of the team, and that's not totally his fault. But you're also looking for leadership from a point of view where if you're paying it because of the way the DP setup is, you're paying specific players this money. Someone needs to lead the team, and there's some level of that's going to be put on that player, and it's hard to now turn around and say, well, that's what this player is going to be for us after the way he's acted and after the way you've interacted. The club can't go away, right? The club can't fix themselves. Not everyone's going to be out the door tomorrow. So if there's all of this built-up frustration in this background, it's hard to believe that Evander can be a productive part of this, and they're going to be willing to outlay this type of money for him in guaranteed money over the next 3 years for someone who's just sort of gone through this experience, even though what we saw with Minnesota is like, you can't guarantee you're going to get another talent through the door. And they tried with Reynoso over and over again because Reynoso was special. And Evander is special. But I can't imagine that they're going to try and build anything around him going forward.
No, so that's interesting, right? Like, obviously, this is all fresh. And I want to take a step back to, you mentioned Emmanuel Reynoso. I was talking to a source, and that was an example that came up. And again, completely different. I want to stress again, everybody I talked to said, great teammate, great kid. Just, sometimes representation, whether or not, how much he's to blame for that, right? Like, at some point he could say, no, like, stop doing this, right? But like, but it's not as if he was a malcontent in the locker room, right? Like, he was unhappy with kind of the situation, but again, I only heard good things. So I want to, while I'm about to compare him to Reynoso, it is not that. But somebody compared it to that in, like, once you start saying this stuff publicly, like, somebody goes, the person I talked to that would have, direct knowledge of this, he may have played his last game for the club, is what
Yeah.
one source speculated to me. And I will say, everybody else was express optimism that this could be, pushed through and they could start fresh or figure it out, right? Like, again, at the end of the day, you sign a contract and like that helps a lot. Money helps a lot, and getting to the end of this process could help a lot. But like Reynoso is an example of, hey, maybe it does happen. Like, and again, like he's not the only person going through this, right? Like there are contract disputes all the time. It's just this one is gone public, and Evander went public with his tweets, right? And one other facet of this that I was interested in, and I find to be interesting, is his relationship with Phil Neville, right? Like, so sources have told me that the two of them are very close. They have great respect for each other. And as contract talk soured, that like Phil Neville was the bridge. Like, there's a chance that he skipped training during that Qatari bid, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a chance that could have happened a lot more. There's a chance that could have been a much worse situation, and more like, like I'm actually gonna hold out, or like right. Like what I was told is that the mutual respect and relationship between Phil Neville and Evander was the olive branch, was helped keep everybody coming back to the table, right? Like, so I think that was interesting. While again, we're going to talk about Vancouver as well soon, and what happened with the Portland Timbers in that loss last night. And I'm probably not all going to be positive for the Portland side of things, but just these are some of the things that, like, we talk about managers all the time, and we talk about tactics, decisions, personnel stuff. What we don't know, what we don't see, is this stuff. And like Jim Curtin told me this a couple years ago, like, the tactical side of the game for a manager is not the most important thing to keep running a club over the course of the season. It's man management, and it's man management like this.
Yeah, no better example than what we saw in Houston, right? The roster changed slightly, but when they went from Paulo Nagamura, an interim, to Ben Olsen, the team went from bottom to top. And a lot of what we have heard is the respect people had for Ben Olsen, and they wanted to be around the group. And Ache, sort of his, belief in what was being built and all of that, it is a massive part of what goes on. Yeah. Here's the part that's tough in this Portland conversation. Evander is under contract with an option for Portland through 2027. So, like, they tried to make the contract offer, but he has no leverage to get out of it because they have the ability to keep him if they want to. And it's going to be tough as well because in the situation he's in, he's on $2.3 million right now, as you said. Like, you could have someone come in and buy him, but you have to have someone come in, buy him, and then offer what it sounds like is double that in contract for him to go somewhere, which is why I talked to one person in MLS outside of Portland and sort of said, like, is there any chance anyone in MLS is trying to get on a phone and try and get him? And they're like, there is no way. If he's going somewhere, it's going to be overseas to a big league. The Middle East was mentioned a couple times in the conversations I had.
Look, if it's a pay raise, like the state of play right now, like he can get more money than MLS in the Middle East. But I think he can get like the contract that was offered by Portland, which I will add, that contract is currently not on the table. I don't know when that was pulled or when that was, hey, we'll talk about it in the offseason, or whether it came from the tweets or not. I don't think so. I think that they said, hey, all right, fine. At this point, we're not getting anywhere. We'll talk about it in the offseason. That has got to be more, like, I don't know what he was making at Michelin, but like it was a handsome pay raise to come here, right? Yeah. Like Hani Mukhtar, like Mikael Ura, like that's kind of where the ecosystem is for, if you're a designated player in Major League Soccer, you're making more than, I don't know if he's a top paid player in Michelin, right? But like that's the hierarchy of things. Like if he went to a mid-table Spanish club, I think he's getting much more money in MLS. So, yeah. Like the Middle East options are there. Like that interest will not stop. The Brazilian options will absolutely be there. Again, Flamengo, they got some money too. So again, I don't know the ins and outs of what the Brazilian clubs might be offering them, but like that's your leverage, Goss. It's that I'm going to make a mess. I'm going to keep tweeting things. I'm going to keep criticizing the club unless you sell me. So that's it's a modern transfer saga, right? Like, so we'll see how this goes. We'll see if, who knows if cooler heads prevail. I do know that the Portland Timbers will have an end of season press conference at some point. I'm assuming very soon, right? Like Ned Grabavoy is going to be talking on the record about this. I think a lot of questions will be coming towards this, and I'll be fascinated to see what he says.
I will say the sad part is he's fun to watch, and I think the league's worse off if he's not in it.
Yeah,
and especially when you look at that Galaxy performance, and now you hear the context. Like, oh, so when he's like focused and angry, he's going to score 2 goals and have an assist every game. And he put up numbers like that this year. And he is like an enjoyable soccer player to watch,
Yep.
and you want him in the league and you want him on the field. Before we get to Vancouver, anything that anyone should make sure they understand stepping away from this? Because we'll continue to cover it here on Soccer Wise as the news comes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of what we started with, trying to make sure that we hit the macro stuff on the contract dispute, why Evander and his camp feel like that they can't trust the club, and but what the club has done to try to keep him, right. Like, these are messy situations. Like everything in the world, neither side is blameless. I'm going to go ahead and assume, and I just, know how these things go. Everybody sees things different ways. So I'm curious to see where it goes. And these things happen in soccer. It's better when people don't tweet out their angry thoughts, right? Or the club, like, it's back and forth. But these things do happen in soccer. So it doesn't make Evander a bad guy. It doesn't make his representation bad people, right? It's just, this is what modern football is, right? Like, he's having an MVP level season. He's trying to capitalize with a contract. Can't blame him for that. You can criticize the way it's going, but that's kind of where we are right now. And this will be one of the sagas to watch this offseason.
I remember sitting down with him at MLS Media Day right when he had signed. Now I realize that was a year and a half ago and not this year. And I said to him, like, Brazilian who went to Midgetland and now Portland. And he kind of was like, yeah, my representation sort of figures things out and I just go and play where I have to play. He was a very interesting person. He seemed very excited about the opportunity, but he also very much was like, whatever happens, happens. And he's followed a weird path to get here. And oftentimes that's the players that come to MLS because it is sort of in a weird spot at times in players' careers. And oftentimes you see when players are ones that move quickly and moved often, they'll leave just as fast. Like, you think of Yakumakis. It was like, wow, this player's coming here, and wow, this player's gone just as fast. And so I'm not shocked to see that. Vancouver, 5-0 in Portland. That one was a little bit shocking. An incredible performance from them. One of the great stories, one of the great moments, I think, in that club's history. And it was an odd cap to a wild card round in which we saw a penalty kick shootout in the first game. We're going to pull Weeby and Doyle to come on here in just a moment so we could do our Golden Boot draft. Then we'll do the full preview. So we'll talk Vancouver LAFC there coming up. But just give me your reactions. Ooh. We did the live show Tuesday night in the Montreal game, which was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is what's happening. This was, oh my God, in a different way.
This Vancouver Whitecaps team stumbled down the stretch at the end of the season. There was, they didn't really have their best 11. I don't believe so off the top of my head. Like, I don't know that Stuart Armstrong was able to start many games as they were bringing him up to speed. I know Ryan Gold is on international duty, so coming back, he didn't start on decision day. Every scenario of what we talked about when they signed Stuart Armstrong, this was the best case scenario. This game, he was awesome. Ryan Gold was even better, and that was the argument for this signing, and for like how not only how quality he is, but what the effect will have on Ryan Gold. And those are the things that we've criticized this team for in the past couple of years. Like, you're a good regular season team, you can get to the playoffs. Don't take you seriously when you play LAFC. I think it's really unfortunate they are playing LAFC now, and I just want to focus on Wednesday night, how incredible that performance was, how incredible Ryan Gold was, how incredible Stuart Armstrong was, and the tactics that Vanni Sartini put out. He completely eliminated the transition game for Portland. He also pressed them to make life difficult on them, to make it uncomfortable. And yeah, Portland didn't do themselves any favors defending set pieces and scrambling defense and making mistakes. Vancouver forced a lot of that, and Vancouver absolutely capitalized on a lot of that. So that was a perfect evening for the Vancouver Whitecaps. There is no other way to say it. And just well done. That was awesome.
It's the capitalization, I think, to me, that stands out. Of like, there's been these moments over the last few years, and we've talked about it on this show, of like, oh, Vancouver's close. Oh, they're right there. Someone asked, do they have a good enough goal scorer in a big moment? Do they have the big chance creator? It's like, well, it feels like they're there, and they just couldn't get over the line a lot of times. And so this is what you see when they put their head down and they take advantage of those chances. You talked about Sartini's tactics. I think he basically allowed Portland's fullbacks to play into pressure, and then they went and were able to launch the attacks onto those sides. We talked about Jonathan Rodriguez a lot on Tuesday or on Monday when we previewed this, wondering how they would set up to sort of counter him. And Matias Laborda at right back, that's exactly what you wanted.
Yep.
I thought they might swap and put Blackman there because of his athleticism and his ability to defend there. Laborda can do a lot of that. He's naturally a center back. He's comfortable in space. He's not a true fullback when he gets forward, but he got forward in this game, understanding that there'd be space to get there because no one defends down Portland's left wing. And so he had chances to get in the box. The chance he creates, on the second goal?
He looked really comfortable there. I had to keep rewatching it. I was like, was that Matias Laborda? No way.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
And then you get confidence and everyone's flowing. Fafa Picault has been huge for them this year. And this is the type of team where a signing like Fafa Picault makes sense. I talked about it on Extra Time with Wiebe and Doyle when they asked about Stuart Armstrong. And I say the same thing about Fafa Picault, which is like, you kind of know what you're going to get on your team from a Gold and a White and from a Kubas. And so if you're a smart player that can read the gaps in between that and take advantage, there's opportunity there. It's not the easiest game always to play, but Fafa has understood okay, when Brian White stretches the field and when Gall picks up the ball, I know where I can find my chances inside of that. And he's elevated his game to carry them through a couple minutes in which those players have been unavailable or not there. So it was a huge moment. I felt really down on this Vancouver project just because you had that stretch coming out of Canadian Championship and then you don't get to host the game. And it just felt like a lot of goodwill sort of falling apart. This was as positive as it could have been. You beat a rival, you get into the postseason, you put up the 5 spot, and now you get a chance at least one game at BC Place going forward. So we'll talk about that one as we get into it. Let's get into this first ever draft type situation that we're going to do here. And let's bring in our guests. We've got Andrew Wiebe and Matt Doyle ready to roll. Wow, Doyle is really well framed in this here as well. What's up, guys?
How you doing, boys?
Wiebe, can you hear us? Are you alive?
Dead inside. Not. He's just dead inside. So Doyle, do you want to present to me my Golden Boot award? Do I get a special trophy for winning 2 times in a row, or
what? You lost, but you came in last. You came in last. Like we had agreed.
This is so much fun.
Anders went through the notes from the meeting, and we had agreed during the draft that we were doing a Golden Boot, not counting penalties. And then you made the weird decision to only draft penalty merchants like Belonga and Gazdag.
I wouldn't have done it, but you do you.
Wiebe and I, and Gaz, we all talked it out on Extra Time. I'm sorry you couldn't get on
Convenient.
Extra Time today, but we talked it out. But no, sorry you finished last place. I actually won. So
Spitz, you didn't even say that with confidence. That was tough. What I will say is
I felt bad because clearly your world has just been shattered a little bit.
I will say the creativity, because what you guys tried to do when it was clear that I was so far ahead of everybody else, and me and Kaylin are so far ahead of everybody else, that you wanted to DP number 9 Portland, that wasn't a real pick. Take away those goals. And then when you took away those goals, you realize, oh God, he's still up by 15 goals.
Dave, you didn't tell me he was down so bad. He's delusional now.
I mean, this is like Phil Neville at the podium last night. I mean, this is he's blaming everyone else. It's not his fault. Take responsibility. But these players quit.
Well, Neville did take
tough. This is a tough listen right now.
I thought the first quote he said was, "This is all my. I take full responsibility," literally verbatim.
And then he proceeded to blame all the players.
He named 16 players on the team that quit and said the only one who was an actual soccer player was David Ashala.
It's my responsibility that I picked you losers.
Yeah, seriously.
I think it's the safest way for us to deal with this, which is it was Anders' fault, and we could just blame Anders since he's not here, and everyone can just feel better.
But what would we need to blame him for, to be fair? I mean, I don't have any beef with Anders. I feel confident in his leadership.
As Doyle, so
I follow. Wherever Anders goes, I follow.
Wiebe, congrats on your second place finish, by the way. I thought you did a great job.
Yeah, assists are not obviously the measurement of a great man. Kissing a glass full of Darjeeling is clearly a sign of mental capacity, and
I don't
Tom
think that
really
holds
Darjeeling. What time is it?
But that's why we should do the Golden Boot draft for the playoffs, so that Wiebe and I can
How
break
convenient!
our tie.
I have 2, just like in real life.
Tom, can we get you internet and not just a bunch of Das Boot glasses that you have 18 of them? Also, you're married now, so this stuff's gonna start going in the trash.
Can I just say, I normally watch in like a different window, so I haven't yet realized, or I listened to the podcast, that Tom is literally standing at like what amounts to a boxer announcer microphone. It's like he is like, let's get ready to rumble. It just is with the mustache and like the hockey haircut. It's just a whole vibe.
We tried to do the show with Tom sitting, and he fell out of his chair the first time on pure energy. So he has to stand for every show.
Smart.
Okay, so me and Tom talked about this for 8 seconds before we started the show. We think 5 picks each for
I
the
think that's
playoff
fair. Yeah,
Golden
that's
Boot
about right.
draft.
That sounds right. And before we get to it, I just
Yeah.
want to say Jake Klein in the comments says, can the 4 of you please say something nice about the Red Bulls for me so Tuesday hurts a little bit less? Are we going to do that?
No, I got one for you. I love going to Red Bull Arena, and I will be there for the home game between the New York Red Bulls and Columbus Crew. And
Sources?
Yeah, sources report. I am the source. So I enjoy going to the stadium. What I will see at the stadium is an open question, but I hope that's answered in a positive way by Emil Forsberg and the boys.
Does that feel like that?
That was positive adjacent. Like that was, on the way to positivity.
You know what? I'll put my money where my mouth is. I won't just say something nice about the Red Bulls. I will take with my first pick in the draft, Elias Manuel.
No.
Elias Manuel. In the postseason Golden Boot draft.
A mean pick to start the draft?
Now hold
Dude,
on.
this
One
is
of
a heat
7
check.
players with a hat trick in the playoffs.
I just won the regular season draft. I'm going to make it 2 for 2. I am doing the Shield Cup Golden Boot draft double, and Elias Manuel is going to lead me to the promised land.
It is not a playoff hat trick, Weeby, because it was in the wild card game.
Postseason
correct?
hat trick.
Thank you.
Look, it depends on the record book that you keep, and the official record.
We
book
have a
is
lot of creative
marking that
accounting
down.
over here. We've seen that.
I just wanted to establish on soccer-wise that we don't
okay.
accept
Gotcha.
that as a playoff performance, unless Ryan Gall does it. Then it counts. And then we're going to backlog his
Got
goals
it.
in. All right, Doyle has gone first. Weeby, we'll give you the second pick as the person who tied on the fake number of the Golden Boot draft.
That feels right. That feels right to me. I have a big. I think it's gonna be Lionel Messi. I think I'm probably gonna take Lionel Messi with the first pick. That's gonna go cash money. Lionel, I'll take him.
All right. So, Weeby, do you want to, because we have a couple people here, I think, that are only fans of specific teams. Do you want to explain who that player is? Because I don't know that it's crossed a lot of people.
Yeah, a small Argentine, really good left foot. He's played in a couple little cities. Barcelona, it's like a coastal city in Spain. Politically very
Atlantic
interesting. It has some similarities in terms of location to water. And then, went to Paris for a little while. Has done some things with Argentina. It's a large country in South America. It tends to be fairly famous.
Has he
around the world.
ever won a Gold Cup? Yeah, it's hard to take him seriously.
Yeah, it's.
Would you say he's like an underdog, like 55%, 55, 60%?
I tried to explain this to Tom before we got on. I was like, we did this segment that me and Doyle didn't understand.
Look, the nice thing about being a MLS meteorologist is that nobody holds you accountable. Like it's like any other meteorologist. You're like, yeah, rain today maybe, and it's like, cool, I've got a hint, but nobody's gonna go back to that guy and be like, you got it wrong.
Did Nate Silver sponsor this segment? Is that what that was?
Oh boy.
Okay.
I don't know. I got to read about that.
Unshackled.
Got to read about that in the New York Times. So I'll check back on that. Later
Don't worry, we have a couple of rumors coming up later from the New York
Cool.
Times. Because unless Tom writes them, they're not real reports, is what I've decided. I'm going to go third. I'm going to take Cucho. I rode him and Diego Rossi in the regular season. I'm going to do it again in the postseason because it got me to third place, and that's exactly where I like to live.
So I'll go last, as a tradition that when you win, you go last. Denny Bouanga is who I'm going to take. I'm going to keep on going with my boy.
And just so we're clear right now, Tom, because you like to cheat a little, do penalty kick shootout penalties count? Or
No.
just penalties?
They did
Obviously
God,
not.
No.
Okay.
No penalties count, just like in the regular season Golden Boot draft. This is only non-penalty goals.
Tom, are you agreeing to that right now?
No. So penalties just don't count just in the games either.
We'll check in with Anders later. We'll see
Great.
what Anders says.
We'll leave some gray area. That's perfect.
That brings it back around to
Like
me.
an unnamed player for a team.
Are we
No,
doing
it's a Doyle.
Snake?
That kind of gray area.
And if it was Snake, I would go again, you nerd.
Is
Well,
it
if
Snake?
it was
Back to
Snake,
Doyle.
you're a snake, so. All right.
No, isn't it back to
Take it away,
Doyle? Haven't we not done Snake?
Yeah, take it.
Yeah, you're up.
I assume Doyle's going to take Alonso Martinez now to just keep it all in the tri-state area.
No, in my
Corey
second,
Burke.
My second pick, I'm taking Patrick Agiman.
Oh, let's
So
go.
much right now. That's such
Go.
a garbage move.
I didn't even write him on my list because I was like, there's no way I would draft him before Goss does.
That's such a garbage move to do.
This is like the hungry hippos of trying to draft Patrick Agiman. To be fair, this entire podcast here, we're all just me. It has to be me.
Tony Oluwaseyi is still on the board. Okay,
that's fair. Okay, I am going to let's see.
I just want it to be out there while Weeby thinks about this. I'm still going to cheer for Ajiman. Like, I'm going to take them as my own goals, and I'm going to cheer for them as if they were my own in that series.
I mean, this is disgusting, and I can barely look myself in the mirror. But I'm going to take Luis Suarez. I just think that you could win the Golden Boot off of 3 games against Atlanta from these two, and so I feel like I would be insane not to just try to stack all those goals.
And for anyone who hasn't been watching like a ton this season, could you explain to people who Luis Suarez is?
He is an elder Uruguayan with one knee. He's managed to score 20 goals again with just one.
Does anybody believe that? Does anybody
one knee?
actually believe that?
That he has that many goals? Because you guys question goal numbers.
Well, his were all non-penalty goals, Tom.
True.
That's
So
a
we
good
don't
point.
question Luis Suarez.
No.
Do we believe that he's as injured as he is claimed from the start of the year? That he can barely move?
Wasn't he? Didn't he retire last year? So he could leave, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if there was some accounting going on, some unusual accounting going on, as Tom knows very well in New Jersey, with the Luis Suarez health and condition there. I'll go next. I'll go Gabriel Peck, the newcomer
nice
of the year in Major League Soccer.
That leaves me. I'll take Diego Rossi.
My guy.
Who was your first pick, Tom?
Buonga.
Danny Buonga.
Okay.
Lifetime contract.
Weeby, don't worry, I'm writing them down.
Okay. I just I just feel
Just misspelled.
I'm the honor. Yeah, everything's misspelled. I have to go through all these drafts that me and Jordan did on the NWSL show, and I keep waiting for someone else to do it and keep realizing that that's my job. I have to be the one that goes and does it. Doyle, we are back to you. You have trolled all of us. You have trolled me. I don't know who else you have left in here. I assume it's either someone who likes golf or someone who talks about being a father very often.
Technically, I'm on to fishing, Dave. We haven't
right.
golfed
I've noticed
in a while.
from the Instagram,
Now our leisure time is going to fishing.
Is that a cost thing? Because like golf is an expensive hobby. No.
No, it's more just that the,
And just
the
so the
pond
listeners,
is like a block.
just so the listeners know, Andrew does not eat fish.
I don't. No. This is all sport fishing. Mindy is accusing me, my wife, is accusing me of animal cruelty and says that I shouldn't be doing this and I shouldn't be taking our sons to do it. But man, once you get that hook in the side of that little largemouth bass's mouth and you drag him in out of the water, the power you feel.
Did you waterboard it too?
No, I'm just kidding.
This is
But it is.
wild.
I've only got 2 of those. All right, I'm pretty proud. Okay, I just had to let people know I've gotten a large.
So
mouth,
it's a real like primal man versus nature thing.
It's more just me standing in nature with the cell phone, and the sad thing is I'm often without a cell phone. Sorry, I'm often listening on headphones to Soccer Wise. So it's like
what,
both.
your iPod?
No, on my phone. It's like therapeutic, but also still sicko tendencies. So I just. Yeah, it's tough for me, but I enjoy it.
Fucking
So Doyle, your fishing pick here for your third
Yeah,
pick.
who are you gonna cast out for here? Who are you gonna set the hook in for your number 3?
Alonso Martinez, because everybody knows there's great fishing in the East River these days.
I've been thinking about hitting
mutated.
the Passaic. Been thinking about hitting the Passaic. You're not supposed to eat out of that though, so we know it's okay.
Perfect for you.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Let's see. I am going to take. I'm going to take Kelvin Yeboah. You know what?
Your boy.
I talked a big mess on Kelvin Yeboah coming into MLS about how it wasn't a DP profile, and I will stick by that on paper. But he has torn up the paper. He has shredded it.
So
He's turned it
Weeby,
into kindling.
doesn't he have the same exact profile that Joseph Martinez had coming into MLS?
There's an element of that.
That was quick.
But
It
I
was
didn't.
quick.
But I didn't. Yeah. But I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you presenting that take at the
fair.
time.
No, that's
So-
fair. That's on me.
All right, you're up, Dave.
Whew. We be kind of going curveball on me. I'm gonna just for the enjoyment. I'm gonna go, but he's not gonna play, and I shouldn't. Basically, I was trying to throw
That never stopped you
Doyle
before
back.
in Golden Boot drafts. Not going to play, and you shouldn't take him. That's like your tendency. This
I
is
know.
your guy.
I was gonna
Can
throw
he- wait,
Doyle
can he-
back and ruin my own team with it.
Yeah, can
You're
you
going to take Mason Toy.
You might be
I
out. but-
wish. I wish I could. How about I get him as a 6 pick, and whatever goals he scores, we can talk about them.
Perfect.
When we get there. I'm gonna go big dunk.
Okay.
Solid.
If you took Ajamong from me, I'm gonna take big dunk back.
I'm gonna go Lucho Acosta. Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's
that's
go
what I was
Cincy.
gonna go with. That's probably who I should have gone with.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Just even for Tom sort of trends one direction, and that is penalty kick takers. So it's natural for him. It's natural.
Doyle, you are back around.
Oh, I'm up.
Boy, Seattle, Houston. Boy, they're just waiting for that.
Luis Muriel, come on down.
Who's who you gonna grab from Seattle, Houston here?
I'll take Jordan Morris.
Had him on my list.
I think Anders told
Jordan
us that
Morris
Jordan Morris took penalties. He'd be better than Denny Buanga.
Yeah, he had more non-penalty goals this year than either Denny Buanga or Daniel Gazdag.
Congrats. When is that trophy ceremony?
We had it today on extra time.
No, talking about the Jordan Morris parade.
when I won the Golden Boot draft, I'm sorry you weren't there. No representatives from Team Tom Kalin could make it. You guys have been relegated actually next year. Good luck with the USL Golden Boot draft.
I thought you were gonna make a joke about like another podcast. You've been relegated from a podcast to just doing Instagram Live.
Time to learn MLS Next Pro, buddy.
Tom, is it true that sources are saying you hate Jordan Morris? Is that what you just said?
And golden retrievers. I don't have that like 7 sources deep like you do on Evander, but that's just it's more of a feeling, I guess, than a hearing. I'm gonna take Dan Jovic. Think there's some upside there.
I feel like half the teams we haven't selected because the assumption is they're just going to lose.
3 games in the first round could be a lot, though.
Yeah, that is true.
Could also be 2 games.
I'm trying to figure out who to pick off this team, which doesn't help me, so I'm not going to go in that direction.
Shout out to Henry Elliott in the chat. Made a really good point. I shouldn't have taken Morris. I should have taken Rothrock. The last 3 Houston games have been games Rothrock has scored in, and he has that Big East pedigree. I blew it with that pick.
He'd still probably be there.
Have we locked into a nickname there on Paul Rothrock?
Paulie Primetime, yeah.
Yeah, Paulie Primetime. That's
Just making sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Diego Luna. Believe in the kids. Play
I
the kids.
like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
How much
It's a
how
sad-
much do we believe in RSL at this point?
I
Not
believe
at
that they
all.
could win their first round series.
I agree with that take.
You said
Yeah,
not at
also-
all, Tom?
No, that's too strong. I'm gonna go.
Not in a champ. Not in a. I don't think. I
I
they're
did say
MLS
that,
Cup
though.
contenders. Yeah, I don't like. I thought that's what you were talking about. Not like, hey,
yeah.
they have nothing, but it's like the whole point's to win MLS Cup. I don't think they're there. They
All
were at
right,
the
so
beginning of the year.
How much does this change if suddenly Chicho Arango gets hot? Then do we
Ton.
think like, oh yeah,
Chicho Arango is my pick, so that's where I was going with that.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Good transition.
okay.
That probably means Arango's going to take all the penalties. I should have had Tom go first. All right.
Oh man.
Final pick.
Yeah, Doyle, your last pick. You're up. You have so far. Where am I looking? Oh, Patrick Ajamong, Alonso Martinez, Jordan Morris, and Manuel. You are on to your 5th pick.
Well, I got to bring it home with Brian White.
Oh,
Nice.
that was
New
a
Jersey
good
Mario
one.
Gomez, let's go.
This
That was a
team,
good
honestly, I do think, Doyle, you are looking at the history, and This is a group that could challenge for a Big East title and could sneak in to an NCAA tournament spot. Hoover, Alabama, we are on our way.
You know what? I think I'm gonna go with my guy, Emil Forsberg. You know, we just got to take the penalties off the board before.
As a
Tom
fellow
can get
father.
there. Yeah.
As a fellow father.
Yes. Yes. No comments.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who's going to be
man.
brave enough? Nobody? Nobody?
I felt like
Leave
Tom
that
had
one?
that loaded up and ready to go from the depths of New Jersey for a while. I'm going to go with Luca Orellano.
Oh, nice.
And hope that FC Cincinnati wins a game or wins the series.
Tom beat you to Lucho, but that's the second best thing. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I'm gonna go ahead and lock in Hofa Nuvarhu with my last pick.
Nice.
Are we committed to the Brazilian pronunciation?
Are you gonna Americanize everything, Doyle?
I mean, I don't
Do
know.
you
I was in a
do you
soccer
want to
line.
tell him how he should pronounce his name? Is that what you're suggesting?
Is the man with a mustache and a Grateful Dead shirt who yells into a microphone aggressively going to accuse someone else of Americanizing everything? Like that's wearing
You
a
just have a
tourist hat
hat
from
that
the
says
Amalfi
in
Coast.
English, Amalfi Coast.
I mean, that is sick.
I will say this. So I'll text Anders and Maria, and I'll let them put together that fifth team out of the
Nice.
picks we didn't take. We're already getting some names in here that are pretty interesting. Henry Elliott said MLS Golden Boot winner Christian Benteke. No one picked him. That's the guy who scored the most goals this
Yeah,
year. Think
no,
about that for a second.
that one did sneak by us. I gotta
Paintsill,
say.
Ponce. Those
Ponce
are
are
a
a couple.
names.
That's two good ones.
Kai
I mean,
Kamara as
honestly,
well.
I mean,
Swiderski-
Giroud. Nobody took the LAFC starting center forward Olivier Giroud.
Also,
Zero
Albert
goals.
Rusnak takes penalties for Seattle, so I
can I-
think we
can I
just
trade
throw
for
him
him?
onto Tom's team.
Martino Heda. Does he say Faku? Faku is probably a miss.
Baku's a miss.
Yeah, Faku was a miss. I think they could
If
put
he had
together a
come
good
through
team.
the super trap,
We could
he'd
go
been
another
on my
5
team.
rounds. I want to get the center backs.
Tom's going to start including penalty kick shootouts at the end of this as well. Anything you guys want to leave us on? Anything else?
I just want the listeners to know that I texted Tom and Dave on Monday, just out of the blue, to see if they wanted to do a special surprise
Oh, and sorry, our connection to Doyle NBA joining us.
NBA season preview pod. Just like without even letting any of the listeners know. Just what do you want to? And Tom's response to me was Knicks. And Dave's response to me was, I'm in a place right now where I really love the NBA and I really love the Knicks. And I'm afraid if I start doing content about it, I won't love it as much. I'll hate it. And after what the Celtics did to the Knicks on Tuesday night, do you now hate it all enough to do an NBA season preview pod with me?
I would have talked so much junk about the Knicks if we did that show. That would have aged so poorly.
You think maybe a team with a little fat guy as your point of attack
Whoa!
defender and the worst rim protector of the past decade as your center, you think that team might have some defensive issues this year?
No,
No,
I'm not worried about that. Yeah,
I'm not worried
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, that doesn't come across. Game's not played on a spreadsheet, mate. Don't-
This has
go
got
ahead.
some real like Dante at the free throw line talking to Tibbs and Rick Brunson energy right here. There's some real back and forth going on. Some real
similar
under
to-
the radar beef.
Similar
that
to
had not been
apparently
aired out
Evander and
before.
Phil Neville. That actually was out of love. Dante said that out of love to Tibbs and Rick Brunson, and they both said it out of love back, and they tried to fight over love, just like we do here. On
To
our
be fair,
shows.
that's the New York way. That's the Tom Bogert way as well. Fighting out of love.
Yeah, you always step with your chest out of love, first and foremost. All right, I've got these teams locked in. We'll keep them updated as we go along. We'll continue to cross over. I was on your guys' show today. Now you come on here, and we'll continue to do it as we go
Guys,
along.
thanks for having us on. This was a lot of fun.
I'll
Yeah,
let you
I
know what
missed
kind of
this.
content
Love
I
you guys.
expect as an MVP subscriber. All my orders will arrive in your inbox shortly.
You could just send them to Charlie Fiction, or as Tom likes to call them, our soccer-wise dads. So just send it over that way, and they'll get everything sorted.
Got it.
And hey, one more point. Morgan pointed this out in the chat. Admin should get that 5th team. I think that's fair because it's a home game for us here at SoccerWise. So
That's fair enough.
Admin.
Fair enough.
All right. I can accept that. It'll be 5 Philly Union players, which won't do well. But Morgan, you got them if you want them. All right.
All right, guys.
Adios.
Let's do a little work now.
God, I miss doing shows with the 4 of us.
Yeah, it's a good time.
5 of us, Kalen.
It's a good time of the year.
Miss it.
It feels a little electric. We're into the playoffs. Miss being all together. Obviously, you should listen extra time if you listen to this show or watch this show, but you should first watch and listen to this show. Then you go get like the little bits that maybe we don't like to hit over on that end as well. I have no idea where my rundown went. Oh, there it is. But it's not that complicated because we're going to get into the postseason. So we are going to come back on Monday, Tom, to do our show instead of Tuesday because the playoffs are happening. Because of that, there are 4 series that kick off Monday night and Tuesday night. We'll talk about them here, probably not as in depth because we'll have a whole nother episode to hit on those when we react as well. I'll probably move the weekend recap show around, maybe pop back in with some guests as we go along because this is like a massively long amount of time for this first round. So there's a lot of time for us.
Great. So
for
much
us
fun.
to cover it. You're really upset. I'm not gonna lie.
I hate it, dude.
The wild card was good, and it's like right now I'm in a place where I'm like, give me more of these.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh, did you just frame that as a disagreement while agreeing with what I said?
Well, aren't you upset about the structure?
I hate the best of 3. I want more like the wild card as well.
No, because my point is there's more playoff games. That's
Just watering
what I'm
down the
saying
games? You want less important games?
I don't know that they'll be as watered down as you'd end up with a situation where it's like can't lose knockout games and you get less exciting soccer. So I'm open-minded right now. Although in thinking back to last year, I was pretty entertained throughout the first round.
Yeah, and to be fair, the games all meant something. Matt Miazga stormed into a referee's office with a pizza box.
In a series that they had a whole nother game to clinch from, and they clinched, and they won, and he was still that upset. That is still that's a great New Jersey moment of him saying, I was kissing to the crowd. I love them. That is New Jersey love right there.
Him saying that, I just recognize that's like something that if you just put in a group chat with me and my like college teammates, like
it would be believable.
1,000%. I love it so much.
Let's start time order. We'll start Friday night, Miami versus Atlanta. Atlanta, the penalty kick shootout victory over Montreal in the 2-2 game. They were up 2-0. Montreal pegged them back to 2-2. And then Atlanta able to see it out and able to get to this game. It was 67,000 people at Mercedes-Benz last time these two teams played, which will be the second leg. I would be surprised if it's that big, but it's probably going to get close.
Yeah, I think so
to
too.
that crowd. Great atmosphere. Moranchuk had a wild goal to equalize in that one, and Messi came off the bench. Suarez as well. Suarez had a shot cleared off the line, and Atlanta was able to equalize on that Moranchuk goal. And then earlier in the year, Atlanta went down and won in Miami. They picked up 4 points off the record-setting team. That game was under Pineda with Almeida on the field, so it was a whole different world. What I'm trying to say is, does Miami have any chance in this one to you? What are you thinking about as you go into this series?
That first Atlanta win was the Thiago Almada, please buy me Botafogo game. That's what I'm dubbing that was. I don't know if it's a stretch to say that was his only good game. Yeah, that's probably too much. I think that was his only great game he played this season before he left after such an incredible last season. Anyway, I digress. I'm just going to kick it back to you. If you had to do an aggregate spread, what would you set the number at? 3.5, 4.5? Where would you put the number?
The spread, or so this is what they win.
Combine all the goals.
Combine all the goals for.
So
all the teams.
if Miami wins 2-0 in the first leg and then 1-0 in the second, that's 3, right? Like what? Or like again, it could be 3 games and Atlanta could win 1, right? Like or 2. Who knows? Maybe it's crazy.
I would set the over under for Miami at 6.5 goals for this series.
Over under or spread? Don't you know the
zero
betting
idea.
world?
I am in the betting world. I'm not good at it, Tom. That's like the key
Spread.
to what I do.
Right.
I would say Miami minus 3.5.
Yeah, I think that's something fair. And I would take Miami in that and like wouldn't think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that Atlanta, again, getting into the playoffs with how dour things were at the end, like after the summer transfer window when Ranchu came in. And again, they still have an interim coach. Rob Valentino's done really well. Like, that's not an easy job, a substitute teacher. Right? This is the second time he's done it. And like, it's easy. It's easier to have what happened to Toronto last year than it is what Rob Valentino did this year with the group. Like, they put out a really good clip after the game of like, this was unity. Like, this is what, so like all of that's cool. All of that being said, like, Miami, significant heavy favorites. And I think this is more about how many goals will they win by over however many legs rather than can Atlanta challenge them.
Yeah, and the entertaining part is if no matter how this goes, it feels like there's going to be a million goals. Because if Atlanta wins, it's going to be they put away chances. You go back to that 2-2 game, Atlanta could have won 3-2. That's a great game. That's entertaining. It was an open game. There's no world because of the way Miami plays that that's not what this series is.
Yeah.
And so if you have two scenarios, one, Miami puts away their chances, they pummel them, Atlanta doesn't get goals, Miami wins by a ton in 2 games, or the other, which is Atlanta's able to win a game and get it back to Miami, in which I think you're seeing a couple high-scoring games in this one. I think both of us find it tough to believe that Atlanta will be the winner, but also we both picked Montreal and we both picked Portland in the last round.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, predictions don't mean anything. I'm an idiot. Nobody knows anything, right? Like, so talking about probabilities here. I know that we ran Weeby through the idea of upset probabilities and where the tipping point is from upset to favorite. But that's how we're playing all of this. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's pretty simple. Like, this is one, like, again, big talking to Doyle and joking about the NBA. This reminds me of one of those NBA seasons where it's like Celtics are playing, I don't know, let's say the Hornets get out of the play-in round this year. Like, not much to talk about in that round 1 game. And I think that mirrors it here because of how dominant Miami was. And again, I've said it on the show plenty of times. I think that they're very susceptible to a potential upset just because of the nature of how they play and the defensive lapses. I don't not at all in this one, right? Like, so I'll be looking at that in round 2, round 3.
It will be entertaining. It will be interesting. Dax McCarty started both of the games against Inter Miami this season for a reason. They tried to flood central midfield. They tried to have as much solid play as they can on the field. I wouldn't be surprised if Moranchuk plays out on the wing, quote unquote, whatever it is. And Amador was pulled off in the 46th minute of the Montreal game. He has been really good since he got there, not just the assists. He wants the ball. He wants it under pressure. He's comfortable connecting. We talked about it with Michele when we did a little bit of the live hangout on Tuesday during the game. So that's a big loss. They'll throw Hernandez over there and they'll play Brooks Lennon, but that's a big loss for them in terms of their ability to take advantage of Miami's deficiencies and all of that. On the flip side for Miami, it's just about being healthy and sort of having your pieces. But the one thing we did say is if they do go to Atlanta, it's on turf where you'd think they wouldn't want to play Messi and Suarez and all these pieces. They did so in the regular season game, which was a midweek game between 2 massive games. They played them off the bench for 30 minutes because Tata loves to play his guys. And the other thing to note is with the way the schedule's set up, if Miami closes this out in Atlanta, they'll have like 2 weeks off before the semifinal. You would think Tata would want to play his group together and have them be cohesive. And so I would be surprised if they took their foot off the gas for the second game, which we'll get to next week as we get into the previews, but something to think about going into it. Let's move on. Saturday night, LA Galaxy against the Colorado Rapids. It's 11 p.m. Eastern time. It's the only game on Saturday. Unfortunately, we don't believe we're going to see Georgi Mihailovic, at least for the first game. It sounds like Cole Bassett will be back and be available for this one. On the flip side for the Galaxy, they're pretty healthy. We just saw these 2 teams match up. So they played on October 2nd, and the Galaxy won 3-1 in Colorado. Connor Ronan with the opener. Galaxy came back in the second half, 2 quick goals from Peck and Puig, and then the stoppage time finisher to make it 3-1. But both the matchups between these 2 teams, 4 goals and 5 goals in the 2 games, both of them, the Rapids have kind of opened up and sort of fallen into what the Galaxy do, trying to press them as the Galaxy spread the field. And the Galaxy, when they've been good, have played through it. And when they haven't, the Rapids have taken advantage. I would expect to see something similar in this game, in this series.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be wide open. I think this will be fun. It is a shame that Mihailovic has the injury concerns that he picked up on decision day. I think for me, like that's the big question coming into this. Can Georgie play in the series? What can that be? Because again, I would like how I guess balanced the attack can be. Like Hafa Navahu has been awesome. I think Omir Fernandez, what's really good about him and Georgie is that they can kind of both play like a secondary role or a primary role, right? Like obviously Georgie is the better player. He's a designated player. He is their unquestioned attacking leader. But the attack can still create chances, and against the Galaxy, that's a little bit easier because they're not exactly defensively stout. So I'm very curious to see what that'll look like. They're going to need a good performance from Omir Fernandez if that's who they give the keys to, or Cole Bassett. Like what he's best at is his dynamic running, his intelligence, and like his timing with all of this, rather than ball to feet create chances, right? Like so, I'm really curious to see how Colorado will kind of attack this game, attack the Galaxy, and whether maybe they'll drop off a little bit to try to play more into transition. Again, I'm not sure, but I think this one's going to be wide open. And again, it's just really unfortunate that we're not going to see these teams at completely full strength without Georgi Mihailovic, at least for the first game.
Yeah, Georgie's been their MVP.
Or assuming at least. I don't know if that's been announced, by the way. I
The
feel pretty
assumption
confident.
The assumption is at a minimum he's missing the first game.
Yeah.
And like the hope is he can get himself back. That's the sort of luxury of these long spread out series is you have an opportunity to get some players healthy. So if the playoffs are just 12 months long, guys will be healthy, guys will be hurt, and they'll be in and out of the team, and you've got that opportunity sitting there. I don't know that they'll let anyone. I just don't know that anyone can step into that spot, and so I wonder if it is third center mid if you bring Larraz in and just sort of accept the fact that you're not going to have that threat, but maybe you're a little safer against Puig and you're able to track him a little more and fill in centrally, or do you try and put a second forward on and just try and trouble the LA backline and not have to get as many numbers forward? But if you do that, is it Darren Yappy? Like, what are you doing there? Right. Do you throw Jonathan Lewis up top? Kevin Cabral's been injured as well. He would be an option in this whole rotation, but he's unavailable most likely for this. So a lot to think about for Colorado. On the flip side for the Galaxy, they seem to have settled in with Garces as the right center back instead of Jalen Neal. Otherwise, the only question is if they start Marco Royce or not, if he's available and they go with the full attack. I would expect in this series they would, and I would expect most likely if they're at home in any game, they will. I don't know if they would in a semifinal against LAFC on the road, but besides that, you'd expect that would be the group they put out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because this is their identity. This is how they play, and like if they're going to go down, they're going to go down with their fastball.
Will Kuntz was on the show last week. He talked about that. He's like, we're here. We might as well take the risk. We might as well go for it, and sort of talked about their possession team and what they've built. If you haven't listened to that one, go listen to that show. It came out last Thursday, I believe, as we went into decision day, in which he said the goal was to win the West because they were already there, and why not go win the West? And they didn't do that. So let's see if they can do a little better with this one. It'll be a fun series to watch for sure. I think it'll be an open one. On Sunday, we've got Orlando against Charlotte. This is, I think, one of the closest series. That's what we talked about on Monday when this one got set, the 4-5 in the East. It doesn't feel like these are teams that are true MLS Cup contenders, but it feels like this series could go either way. What are you thinking about as you go into this one?
Yeah, I know that we talked about this previously, but how is this going to play out? I'm assuming that it's going to be a low-scoring affair. I'm assuming it's going to be cagey and feel like a cup competition where two teams are trying to eliminate mistakes rather than kind of go open up the game, because I think that's where both of these teams are at in their strength. I think Orlando's best attacking kind of movements are maybe not full-blown transition, but at least in some open space for Facundo Torres and Martin Ojeda. Like their movement, I thought is really good in that attack, particularly with the way that Facundo can kind of jump into the 10 and then inside as Dagger Dan is overlapping. And Ojeda has been really smart at picking up spaces and where he's kind of being dangerous in these games. Like he's drifting a lot and he's been awesome. So again, I think both teams would be content to let the other team take the game to them. So that's always an interesting kind of game of chicken of, okay, which team is actually going to step up and get on the ball and actually kind of try, and is that going to be detrimental or not? So that's kind of what I'm looking for just in terms of the tactical evolution or just how the series is going to play out on the field in terms of that.
Yeah, and for Charlotte's point of view, you expect to see Tim Ream at left back. It's been the most solid they've looked when they've been set up that way with Privet at center back. They've had some rotation in the attack because of internationals, but then they've played well in those games. So it'll be interesting to see, does Abada get his spot back? Does Swiderski get his spot back? You know, we're talking about Patrick Aujamong and where he stands, but he has scored goals. He has created goals. Swiderski has consistently then come back into the team, and Dean Smith hasn't found a way to play them together. And Abada didn't get the starts because he was away with the national team, and then coming back on decision day. Pep Biel has looked comfortable out wide. Then the question is, what goes opposite? Let me ask you this. Do you think there's any performance that happens this playoffs where Pep Biel is back with Charlotte next year?
Dude, it's such a good question. I don't know. I don't think so, but like I really like Pep Biel as a player in this team. I wouldn't love him as the big DP swing. And again, like we're talking Miguel Almiron, Calvin Stangs, Giovanni Lo Celso. Like this is no disrespect to Pep Biel. Like it's one of those tweeners where if he's a max TAM guy, I love that. DP10, not as much. And again, I do hate to even lay it out like that because like I don't like putting ceilings on players, particularly good players. And I think he's a good player. It's just there's a delta between him, and we were talking about Evander at the beginning of the show. We talked about Lucho Costa. We've talked about, like all these guys. And, you know, maybe he proves that, hey, maybe something like that is in there. But, like, I think the safer assumption would be no.
These two teams played back on September 18th. It was a really tough week for Orlando. They played Charlotte, and then they went and played Columbus midweek that week. It was a 2-0 win over Charlotte and then a 4-3 loss to Columbus for Orlando. But it was one of the better weeks they've had the second half of the year. They put together a really good run of form. They haven't really knocked off the highest level of teams, but they've shown that they can do it against this Charlotte team. And they have a few different options of what they can go with. Duncan McGuire, Luis Muriel, Ramiro Enrique. They have a few different options in the attack. They can move things around a little bit as well. And I think they're going to have to because of how well Charlotte can defend. And they're going to at some point need to go with the two center forwards and try and win battles in the air and all of that going forward. The first time these two teams faced off, Scott Arfield picked up a red card. So probably not super relevant to what we're going to see in this next one. We talked Vancouver a little bit. They face off against LAFC. Let's talk about Vancouver and what they accomplished before we get into some really depressing numbers as we get ready for this series. Tom, you said it. We were hoping for more for Stuart Armstrong. Is this enough? Like, is this a big season for Vancouver? They won the Canadian Championship. They win the knockout game. Like, is this sort of the next evolution of this project?
No. If they don't advance in the first round, then no. And I have sympathy that they're facing LAFC. Like, that's really unfortunate the way this broke out. They wouldn't be in this position if they didn't stumble across the finish line in the regular season. Like, I don't want to get too distracted by the wild card game. Again, as great as it was, that's a really important data point. But that doesn't fix everything else that happened. That doesn't fix the going into the season. It kind of go back to the macro level. The next step is winning a playoff series. That's what they need to do. Yeah, it sucks it's against LAFC because they've played this team several times and they don't kind of match up with them particularly well. That's why you bring in Stuart Armstrong to hope to change things. And if they play like they did against Portland, two vastly different defensive teams, two vastly different game models, two vastly different player personnel in those defensive units, if they play that well, they have a real legitimate chance. And I wasn't sure that there was anything realistic that I was going to be like, really considering this, right? Like, that's how good they were the other night. Again, that being said, like the step forward has to be advancing in the playoffs. It just has to be. Like, first round and out, that was good in the first couple years of Vanni Sartini because this team had been starving. This team had been dying just for playoff appearances. It was like Orlando a few years ago. Like Luis Muzzi, Ricardo Moreira, and Oscar Pereira coming in. They made the playoffs for the first time in club history. That's not enough now, right? Like, they went and won the Open Cup. They went and had, like, they've done what they've done over the past couple years. Like, I think that's a good mirroring of this situation in Vancouver, that we were rightly giving them praise for Canadian Championships, rightly giving them praise for getting to the playoffs and for playing this good soccer. Well, now after getting easily eliminated by LAFC in the Champions League and then in the playoffs last year, like not even close kind of stuff, this year you need to show we've got an improvement. We can get into the nuance, right? If it's a really hard-fought 3-game series, maybe there's penalties in one game, whatever, right? Like, yeah, like that's it. But like the bottom line here is they've got to advance to have a big improvement year over year.
The exact numbers on that. So it was a 6-2 aggregate last year in the playoffs, and it was 6-0 across the CONCACAF Champions Cups last year against LAFC, where they were eliminated both times by this team, and I believe Leagues Cup as well, but I didn't have the numbers on that one. And now you come into this series. I tried to set us up on a positive convo first, and then I set you up in the worst way, and we went straight in the other direction. So shout out to Vancouver fans. Enjoy what happened. Obviously, enjoy the moment. The victory over Portland's nice. I mean, if I was a Vancouver fan and I saw that we beat our rival in their building and ended up their best player trying to burn the house down on the way out because of the game we had, I'd feel pretty good about all of that in general. So enjoy that for Vancouver fans. And I think there is some nuance there. Like if they play this series the right way and it goes to 3 games and they're close, I think you could come out of this saying, here's the path forward, and here's like a continued increase for this team, because the reality is LAFC might win the West, and you might have already set yourself up in a tough way where you could play a performance that gets you a series victory over an RSL or Seattle or Houston, but you're not going to get that. You're not going to get that result. The other thing would be play better in the regular season, and you have the opportunity of not being that. Yes, I felt that coming, Tom, and you're right, and that's why I think on this show, we were so positive coming out of the Canadian Championship that we've been let down so much by the performances since then to not set yourself up in a better way. And because take away the Stuart Armstrong signing, it's a club that's built some depth. They have center back options. They have wing back options. Fafa Pico's play has given them a couple different options in the attack. They've moved a few different players into central midfield, and they've played well when Berhalter's gotten the minutes or Schopf has gotten the minutes. Vite has moved in there and played really well as well. So they looked like they were good enough to sort of be able to challenge without those players, and that hasn't been the case so far. Let's go to, what are we on, Sunday now? Oh, no, now we're all the way over to Monday.
So allegedly going to go quicker through because we'll talk more about it. But like I don't trust myself to not talk too much, so we'll see.
FC Cincinnati, NYCFC, your first one. Cincinnati eliminated NYCFC from the Leagues Cup. 4-2 win after being down 2-0 in that game. I went back and watched a few minutes of the game. It was a bizarre starting lineup from Cincinnati. They had Walters in goal, Kip Keller, Halsey, Pinto, Dado Valenzuela, Kelsey, and Baird up top. Shout out to Dado Valenzuela. I love that player, and I'm very excited for him. Otherwise, they split the season series 1-1, NYCFC winning the most recent game 3-2. Something to note here. There is a rumor coming out from the New York Times, a.k.a. The Athletic, from over in England, saying that Arsenal women's team, who just lost their head coach, Jonas Ideally, can't remember now, who coached them at a high level for a number of years, stepped away this month. The report is, I should call it a report, Tom, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's The Athletic.
Sam Stachel jumping through his phone right now to yell at me. The report is that Nick Cushing is one of their top options to replace him and to carry the team forward. The timing is very interesting, right? Whether NYCFC wins MLS Cup or not, like their season's going to be over in 5 or 6 weeks. It opens the door for this potential. He obviously coached Man City women's team as his first head coaching job at the senior level before he came over to NYCFC as an assistant and now the head coach. And this has obviously been their best season under him, but it hasn't been as successful as expected under him. And this kind of, to me, feels like a very convenient way to sort of part ways for both parties.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, that would make sense. And again, it makes sense that the Arsenal women's team are interested in Nick Cushing. That's like, he got to start as the Manchester City women's manager. Again, while I don't think that he's been awesome with NYCFC, I think he's a good coach, right? Like, so this all makes sense. Yeah, the only drawback is you said even if they win MLS Cup, that's 6 weeks or whatever, right? So it's not that long, except even if they get eliminated in round 1, that's 5 weeks. So who knows? Who knows how long Arsenal women can wait for that, for this portion of the playoffs to end. But yes,
Arsenal women's leadership and Tom are the two members of the anti-playoff schedule committee.
Yeah. So the criticisms are fair. Like, I haven't taken the temperature of NYCFC fans super recently, but like, it was really, really strong and really loud early in the season of what they wanted. They wanted a coaching change. So yeah, like you said, I think it might be convenient timing. I think for all parties, who knows? We'll see. Again, that's feel a little disrespectful for a team that finished wherever they did 6th. Sorry, and in the East, that like wasn't an awful season, wasn't great, right? Like so,
But
it's not
sixth
like
in the
oh my
Eastern
god.
Conference is not, I think, what that club expects.
No, yeah, and I totally agree with that. But so just trying to find where the balance is here. But yeah, anyway, I'm really. What does Cincy do? Cincy benched Nico Cialchini and Kevin Kelsey on decision day.
Yeah.
Like, I was speaking to someone at the club. It's just like, yeah, Noonan felt like, man, like that's what I had to do. Like the two likeliest people to get goals at center forward are my a player Luca Oriano brought in to be a left wing back, and Yu Yakubo brought in to play every single position. Right? Like this is like a really interesting subplot, and like it can work because Lucho Costa is so good, because Luca Oriano is so good, particularly individually in what he can do, and Yu Yakubo. I love that guy, man. Are you kidding me? Like, who else in MLS can do all of the jobs and all of the roles that he's done so seamlessly? So, I think it can work. And, like, dude, for me, this is my legitimate dark horse. Like, I think they should be viewed below Miami and Columbus, and probably comfortably just given where this roster is. No Matt Miazga. Center forward didn't work out. They've spent all season long putting out fires. Everything has had to be reactive rather than proactive. Yeah. And they've gotten to where they are, like, this team, man, like a lot of other teams would have crumbled here. And like if Lucho is MVP Lucho, and you just lean in and say, okay, we got Miles Robinson, Cheeto Awaziem in defense. We have Obi Nwabodo and Pavel Buka in defensive midfield. Like, we're going to defend deep. We're going to be hard as hell to play against. Lucho go win his games. And I legitimately think there's a path to MLS Cup that way, even with Miami and Columbus. I legitimately think that.
I agree with you. And I think one of the things about Cincinnati that gives me reason to believe is I think they believe it. Like, even with the struggles they've had up top, I think if they go into a conference semifinals against Columbus, they're going to believe they should win. And that they've been, most of this group has been there before. Inter Miami, the same. Like, I think there's a ton of belief in this Cincinnati group that they are in that echelon and that they're right there and that they have the potential. If they're healthy and all available, I think there's a lot to like about this group. I would love to see Yedlin be like a difference maker from right wing back. He has been solid, and a lot of it's not his fault. He's had to play center back, and he's played with a number of center backs who can't really cover for him the way he'd like to. But that was a plus move, I thought, when they brought him in, and you haven't really gotten to see a ton of that, which is why I think it's okay to play a Kubo up top, because I think at least knowing where your center forward option is allows everyone else to start to operate more comfortably and to be able to play in and out of his feet. I think that's fine. And Kubo can give them that if they need to. I think for sure in this first round, it's going to be a comfortable matchup in that both these teams, I think, are going to open up the game and go for it. And so I think that's why you've seen all these goals between these two teams, because Cincinnati are going to pressure high and they're going to try and play at a high tempo. And NYCFC seem to be very comfortable going into that. And then it just becomes a case of who can finish and who can make the individual moments. But I think both these teams are okay with a similar game style occurring. And for NYCFC, it's been super successful at times this year. They beat Cincinnati. They crushed the Red Bulls. Like, they've been fairly comfortable playing against higher pressing teams and allowing the game to open up and allowing them to create chances with their pressure as well. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun for this series, and it's probably going to dictate a bit that future for NYCFC and what they do at the manager position. Mm-hmm. Seattle versus Houston here. Seattle on a 7-game unbeaten streak coming into this one. Star Rock with the winner in the last game. That's what I chose to go with in this one. In the 1-0 victory over Houston. 2-2 draw the game before that between these two teams. For Houston, last year, they didn't win a game on the road in their postseason run, right? They lost the away game to RSL, and then because of upsets, they ended up being the home team in the next round, and then they went to the conference finals and lost to LAFC on the road. So a little bit of a different test here, but I just feel like Houston are coming in very comfortable with who they are and what they need to do. It's going to fall on Ponce to finish some big chances, and that's like the number one thing I'm thinking about coming into this one, because I feel like I know what I'm going to get from Coco and Artur and Ache and a lot of these pieces that have been difference makers for Houston, and that's sort of that question mark that they've added to the team to hope it gets them over the line.
Yeah, I was interested to hear your Houston lean, if I'm not reading too much into that like Seattle have been one of the hottest teams in the league. I think Seattle are a very good team. I really like this Houston Dynamo team as well. This is going to be a super fun first round matchup. I hope, I guess, maybe. But like just the way that Houston play, what they can do in possession, and how they can really kind of control the midfield and dictate the way the game is played. I think that's going to be really useful in this matchup against Seattle. Seattle were, I believe that they had the fewest goals conceded in the league this year. And so if Houston are controlling the game, I think that bodes well for Houston, and that's how they play. That's what they want to do. I do like it. This would be an upset if Houston beat Seattle just based on just the seeding and how Seattle finished the season as well. But like, I really, really like this Houston team, and I think that but I think both teams, to be fair, are set up to perform in the playoffs, given with Seattle their defensive solidity, and they have the top end talent of Rusnak and Morris in the attack to make special moments. I think that they're really, really even as well. But again, I do like Houston.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if this wasn't a 3-game series. I think what's funny about coming into this one is a lot of the things I felt about Seattle for the past 10 years is how I feel about Houston, of like those guaranteed performances and a high floor and having that solid spine, where Seattle, we haven't seen it in the postseason. We haven't seen it in knockout games for a few years now. Coming out of MLS Cup and the CCL win, like they have not performed when they've even gotten in knockout games, and Houston have over the last 12 months, from Open Cup all the way through Leagues Cup and into the MLS playoffs. The other games that we finish out with is Columbus against Red Bulls on next Tuesday night, and RSL versus Minnesota as well. RSL Minnesota, I think we had ranked as our second most excited series coming into this one. I went back and watched the previous game they played, a 0-0 draw, so a lot to get excited
Hell yeah.
for.
In October,
that
too.
one.
We can't even say these teams have changed so much since the last time they played.
We cannot, but Philip Quinton was on the field, so hopefully that doesn't happen.
And hey, you know what I like to do is if the information or the data does not support what I was thinking, I just disregard it. And who cares? That game didn't happen. What are you talking about?
Absolutely. I think that's a fair thing to say. Columbus Red Bulls, they played on decision day. 3-2 win for Columbus with the stoppage time winner. They are heavy favorites in this one. They beat Red Bulls both times they faced off this season. To have just beat them when you're not even really in first gear because you didn't have anything to play for bodes pretty well for this Columbus team. I kept trying to hype up Red Bulls to you off air over the last few days of like, Red Bulls are going to come out and throw a bunch at you and they're going to play gritty, and like they did it to Cincinnati last year. And then I went back and looked and they lost that game to Cincinnati 3-0 after coming out and playing quote unquote so well, is what I kept saying.
Okay,
So,
and if the game stays tight to the 0-0 in the 60th minute, and you're like, oh, it's 2-0 at halftime.
yeah. So, let me throw this at you before we get out of here. And we'll talk about these two series a lot more next week as we get ready to dig into them. But the MLSPA numbers came out. You wrote a piece about it at Give Me Sport that people can go check out. Kelvin Yeboah for the summer signings. This is the first time we're seeing salary numbers for the summer signings. We got the contract status. Now we got the salary numbers. Kelvin Yeboah comes in. He's the 9th most expensive signing in the summer at $1.4 million. So just above Marco Royce, who is full TAM, not on a DP deal, and behind Goncalves out at RSL. We weren't sure what type of player Yeboah was going to be.
Yeah.
This feels like a really good move for Minnesota.
Yeah, he's been really good. And, like, you can poke holes in small sample size. You can poke holes in, he has had a handful of penalties, right? Like, what's sustainable here? Like, whether or not the literal production per 90 is sustainable or not, that's fair, right? But I feel really safe in saying this is a really good player. And he, most importantly, fits really well what this team wants to do. I think he's really indicative. I think his strengths are, going to be, brought up in what Eric Ramsey and Khalid El-Hamad want to do with this team as they continue to remake this team. Look, they were super busy in the summer. They still have more moves to make. Like, that was their first real window. Like, Khalid El-Hamad did some stuff more so on the outskirts of the roster in the winter, right? Last winter, right? So, the fact that they're here right now where they are, like, I was super interested to see what's Yeboah's number going to come out at. What some other ones. The other ones, like, Alexei Mranachuk was the most expensive in terms of transfer fee, right? $13 million, as well as salary, and that's at $3.68 million. It is like just a hair above Olivier Giroud, Third most expensive summer signing in terms of salary is Stuart Armstrong with the Vancouver Whitecaps, which I found really interesting. Like, we knew that he was above the max TAM threshold, which is like 1.7 million.
Yeah.
But he comes in at 2.9 million. Like, that's aligned with Ezekiel Ponce, the Houston Dynamo club record signing. So all these numbers were really interesting. I think Marcel Hartl at 2.2 million is phenomenal. Cedric Teutcher, I think he's at like $1 million. He didn't make the top 10. Phenomenal. I think what Minnesota and St. Louis did this summer was just
Pereira is only on 600, roughly 700,000. So he's DP in name only. And then you assume they could buy him out?
Yeah, I assume, like, what was that fee? I honestly don't remember. Like, was it 3 million? If it's 3 million, then they can absolutely do that, right? Like, even if they can't right now, over the life of the contract, the guaranteed portion of the contract. But so even if not, like, that's the kind of deal that, if he's here for a few years, that can then be bought down, right? Like, that's the advantage of it. Yeah, because then the transfer fee will have been amortized, and then if you can keep it under the max TAM. So again, I know that we're, punch drunk at an hour and a half into this, and we're talking about whether or not he can be bought down in 3 years. But like, this is the sicko stuff. Like, this is the fun stuff of like pouring over these numbers, like talking about it in the group chat, and being like, oh my god, like, who are we looking up? Like, what do we want to know? Like, Ousmane Boukari, Austin FC club record signing, not in the top 10 of salary, and it doesn't really matter because that's discretional spend. His was a $7 million transfer. There is no way to amortize that down and buy him down, particularly if he stays. And if he stays, that means things are going well. He's going to get a pay raise, right? But like, that's a really low number when you look at some of the other ones. Like, so, like Carlos Vela, I think was like 360,000. I know that he hasn't played yet, so. But I was interested in that stuff too. But just pouring through these numbers. And anything else stick out to you that I haven't said in rambling and naming 15, 18 guys?
Not really. I went through some of the summer signings on the defensive side. It seems like Tim Ream's at about 500,000.
Yeah.
Locked in for two more years.
That's
but
a good deal, man.
Yeah, that number. I didn't know what the number was, and that's kind of what I was looking for. Was like, did they overpay to get a guy who's kind of a name but is a little bit too late in his career? That's a fine contract for them to get put into. And then Awuzium is at 1.2 million, so he's on max TAM for this Cincinnati team. And you sort of was asking yourself, how do they get there? How do they get a player in? And he's right on that line, but I think he's been really good, and I think he's been really impressive as a player to bring in here. So those were some of the ones that stuck out to me. Ponce at 2.5 million is what you'd expect.
Yeah.
And he needs to score goals. Like, that's the number Evander was on. He needs to score goals to make it worth it. And I think this playoffs is a big opportunity for him. But this is the type of stuff we love to talk about here at Soccer Wise. We are going to, as quickly as we can, get all these numbers into our depth charts and into our salary tables as they are updated. And so that way you have all that current information. We're already starting to hear teams making postseason decisions about players that are unavailable. We already know the free agent list. And you're already starting to hear rumors as teams start to get connected to the next set of players. I think a bunch of new contracts were agreed. Austin announced like 5 new contracts.
Yeah.
Over the last week for guys that are staying there. They extended Diego Rubio. They gave him a new deal.
Wolf, Brandon Hines, Ike.
Potter O'Brien, Brandon Hines, Ike as well, and all of that. So we're going to have that updated for you so that's the best place for you to understand everything that's going on, what it means, and what it all sort of becomes and turns into. We have the playoffs coming up. We're going to be back, as I said, on Monday here on this show. I've got the mailbag episode coming out tomorrow, so if you are in the Discord and you want to add your mailbag question, feel free to do so. We're going to have an interview with FC Porto's U17 coach, Miguel Lopez. He's working with an organization on tactical periodization that's having an event here in the U.S. that they wanted to promote, but it was a great opportunity to talk to someone who's worked in youth development at the highest levels about what works, what doesn't, what could be done better, and a little bit about what we talked about last week with Bobby Warshaw on this show. Thank you, of course, Andrew Weeby. Thank you to Matt Doyle. Tom, thank you to you. Morgan, thank you to you as well. Thank you to all of you for listening.
Thank you, David.
We'll talk to you again very, very